I'm just going to do the London recap for Friday for EU and AU. So I'll start with EU. Obviously, we had the break of structure here where we got the closure below, but then after a break of structure, we can expect a pullback. But obviously, we don't know when that's going to happen because you can see here, like, we got the break of structure and then we tanked probably another 200 pips. So you don't have to pull back straight away. The first sort of 3 days of the pullback were very slow, so there's nothing massively convincing there to suggest that price is just going to shoot to the upside and mitigate that supply in the premium. So I was aware that we could take advantage of buys, we could get the pullback. Then I was also thinking that maybe before we get the more complex pullback, we might sweep this low and then sort of take out the liquidity there, and then we'll sort of get the more complex pullback. But as I said, there's a lot of prediction there, and sort of we can only sort of work with what we have at the moment. So yeah, obviously anticipating the daily pullback, but not absolutely welded to the idea that it has to do that. Sort of being aware that we can continue lower, even if it is just to sweep the low. On the 4 hour, then it's pretty messy, to be honest. We had the bullish chalk here, and then mitigated this inside bar, push back down. The supply that caused the bullish chalk held, but then price pushed up and it failed to close above the high. So for me, this low is weak because it failed to close above the high, and then you can see we swept basically the perfect equal highs into this supply. So it was possible, considering that the 4 hour swing and internal are both bearish. I was thinking that we could just keep tanking and basically take out the trend line liquidity behind the equal lows. So yeah, from the 4 hour and the daily, just sort of trying to stay as neutral as possible. You could say that there was some demand in here somewhere. It's like, personally, that inside bar was spiked through, so there was enough demand within there to cause price to spike the high. But then when it didn't close above it, it's questionable whether it's that strong. So it was something that I wasn't too worried about, to be honest, with regards to taking sells if they lined up in the M15. So yeah, 4 hour bearish. Possible we could see the 4 hour pullback, but yeah, nothing massively convincing so far. Then on the M15, I'll just use bar replay here to go back to where we were this morning. So this is 6:30 going into London. So obviously the M15 is bullish. We've had the double break of structure. First one there, second one here, which obviously confirms the bullish trend. But then of course we did mitigate the 4 hour supply here. So it is possible that the M15 may have only switched bullish to mitigate this here, and then that basically this low, which is obviously weak on the 4 hour as it hasn't caused an IBOS or a break of structure, could easily be run, which would obviously see the M15 switch bearish. So currently this was the swing low and this was the weak swing high, which obviously we're expecting to be run if the bullish trend is to continue. The internal structure, this was the last significant IBOS for me, so we were still contained within this sort of IBOS range. There was this sort of IBOS, or whatever you want to call it, that like, it's quite a clear pullback, swept liquidity there, and then got the close below, so we were operating within this range as well. We'd come off the demand at the extreme of the internal range, so I was thinking, obviously, if the internal and swing trends are to continue, we could have mitigated this and then taken out the weak internal and swing high. But sort of after mitigating that yesterday evening, we just pretty much just range sideways during Asia. So coming into London, we had this sort of, again, it's your triple IBOS, like you're getting into the internal of the internal of the internal at this stage. But you can see we had the range, it closed below, we had this demand or supply within it. So there was a potential sell within here that I will go through on the M1 in a few minutes, but personally I wasn't interested in it. Personally, all I was waiting for was price to smash that trend line liquidity there and basically mitigate the extreme. And then, yes, the internal and swing were both bullish, but we had this sort of clear range here. So I was thinking that we could have, if I could have got a sell in here, that I would have had plenty of risk to reward just to target this weak internal low, and it's weak obviously because it failed to take out this high or that high. So yeah, it's pretty complex internal structure, but this is pretty much what I was waiting on, and there was a valid sell within here that I'll go through. I'll just play it forward. You can see we come into it and then it just absolutely tanked. Obviously there was the valid sell within that I will go through. The key detail here is this is still your protected internal low. We didn't close below this low, so this could potentially be a sweep liquidity. Again, there was a valid entry within here. It was pro M15 swing and internal structure. And then obviously if this is a liquidity sweep, this high becomes weak, so we could have at least targeted that there. There was a potential entry in there, but personally I didn't take it. The EQ of the POI had already been mitigated here and failed to follow through, and obviously you have a lot of bearish momentum to the downside there, so I personally would have waited for something clearer. Then you can see we smashed the upside, then take out this liquidity as expected. At this point I was less interested in sells, because obviously swing is bullish, the two internal structures, or this internal structure is bullish. We had a sweep liquidity into the extreme demand of the protected leg. So and then you can see just huge V-shaped recovery. So at this point, swing and internal are both bullish, a lot of momentum to the upside. I would have wanted to see something absolutely picture perfect within this supply to look for a sell, because you just have to take a message from the market. Like, you have the sweep at the extreme low and you have that V-shaped recovery, like that tells you that there's a good chance that the internal swing trends are going to sustain and that we could potentially target here. But obviously that won't be, I won't have a high degree of that I won't have a high degree of confidence of that happening until we sort of get a close above that high, internal high, whatever you want to call it. So so we'll go through the couple of potential entries here and the M1 price action just to show you. I'll drop down. So obviously have this POI, so I'll just play it forward here. Come into the POI, this is your picture perfect liquidation above here, and the reason why it is a picture perfect liquidation is because it took out this low. So I put much more stock in a liquidation that actually achieves something, whether if it's a high that caused the chalk or an IBOS, then if that high gets taken out, then I sort of view that as a much more significant liquidation than if it's just like equal highs that didn't really achieve anything. If it's just like a sideways correction, yes, they're valid to counter as inducement, but you want to sort of ideally see something that achieves something. And then just fast forward it. See there, we've got the chalk at the red line. So you have the momentum in, wick, sort of decent V shape. And then you could enter in the EQ of the extreme with a 2 pip stop. And then I'll just put it forward. Yeah, tagged in, and then price absolutely tanked. I think it was about 10 or down into this demand. Yeah, if you use the fixed 10 or, you would have just hit 10 or perfectly there. So then obviously coming into this demand, you can see the huge amount of momentum to the downside. It's pretty much one straight push in the M1, but then obviously you have this clear sort of low within the POI, so that's a pretty significant liquidation. And then if you want to be aggressive, if you want to follow the swing on the internal trend from this POI, personally it was already mitigated, and then the amount of momentum to the downside, it's like personally is a bit too aggressive for me. I wouldn't have had the stomach sort of executing the M1 against all that. But it makes sense because the swing and internal are both bullish. So you can see the entry model here. It's one of the entries that's it's cleaner on the 15S, but you can see it in the M1. So you obviously have the liquidation of the major low here, and then another minor liquidation below that there. Wouldn't be too significant. And then pull back up, mitigated this whole sort of range, which is your flip. And then I'll show you that in the 15 second just to clarify it. You can see we got the close below the low there, so then this becomes valid supply in the 15S, then we pull back into it, get the reaction. So that's sort of what you can see in the M1. But obviously on the M1 this supply isn't that strong because it didn't cause price to close below the low. Then if you just play it on, so that's your flip when you got the close above there. That's your failed reaction point, and then obviously your V shape. You got your decent amount of momentum, and then price just pulls back in, takes off the upside again. You should have comfortably hit 10 over there if you're using a fixed target. Yeah, but again, just given the amount of momentum to the upside, yes, there was a very clear liquidation. Yes, it's pro M15 swing and internal, but it just feels a bit too aggressive for me. yeah, more than valid if you want to be aggressive. And then sort of coming towards the end of the session, then we had this M15 supply, which as I said, I was not massively enamoured with at this point, because after price failed to close below here, this high became weak, and just the sheer momentum, the upside, like it's pretty much sweep liquidity and a V-shaped recovery. The internal swing are both bullish at this point. The small internal, I don't have as much faith in it holding, so at this point I was very reluctant to sort of look for sells from this POI, but I don't think anything set up during session hours on it. Yeah, that's the end of session now, and then we'll see what way it played out. Yeah, you can see the POI field, so that's sort of why just the I like this POI at the start of the session, because I was thinking we could have run this week low, but then when we didn't mitigate this, and then spiked the low, failed to close below, and then you have to think, if you view this, yes, it didn't hit the refined pivot, but it hit the EQ of the range. So when the EQ of the range is mitigated and it failed to close below there, it's like, again, there's a pretty good chance that that high is going to get run at that point, particularly when you see the momentum. So that was that. Coming into London, or coming into New York, clear momentum to the upside now. Sort of, we've had this double IBOS. So at this point, Evelyn's pretty much bullish, so it's more than valid to look for buys maybe from that demand, or that demand maybe, although it's not the best. But yeah, no trades for me. This one was definitely valid, but I just didn't really like the overall higher time frame story enough to take it. I was sort of happy enough to wait for the liquidity to get swept into this POI before potentially targeting the low, but it's more than valid. And then this was, again, valid but very aggressive, and I think if you take that position, that aggressive sort of entry model from a POI has already been mitigated. I think over a large enough sample size, I don't think it's really that optimal a move, but that's AU on it. AU will be short and sweet. On the daily structure has got a bit complex. Obviously, we're bearish overall. That was our break of structure. So this is our swing high, this is our swing low. We had the bullish IBOS there, but then, so the internal is bullish. This is our whole sort of demand range. But we've mitigated this flip zone supply in the premium. So it is very possible, given that the daily's bearish overall, that this could follow through and run the week low. Another thing to consider is we had this sort of range here, which is within the larger range, but basically we've got to close below that. Like that's a pretty significant pullback, so a close below that is not insignificant. So yeah, obviously bearish overall. The daily could go either way at this point. Obviously overall favour sells, and then obviously we're coming into this sort of flip zone here that led to the chalk and this sort of break of small internal structure, whatever you want to call it. So it was possible that we could roll over to the downside from here, but the daily favour sells overall, but obviously it could go either way, with the internal still a bit technically being bullish. On the 4 hour, and the 4 hour is still bullish. That was the most recent break of structure. So this is the swing high and this is the swing low. Now price came down off the daily supply here, and we wicked the low there, and then we wicked the low again, and then we got the close above the internal high. So at this point, the swing and internal are both bullish, coming off sweep liquidity. So it would not be beyond the realms of possibility. The 4 hour swing and internal are both still technically bullish, that we could continue higher and perhaps come up and mitigate this daily supply here. But obviously quite a lot has to happen, has to line up for that to happen, and then obviously price spiking through this sort of extreme demand as well is not it's not a good sign for buys either, because obviously, yes, you can trade liquidity sweeps, but sort of the foundation of this demand is sort of, or this strategy is sort of higher highs, higher lows, sort of supply holding or demand holding, whatever way you want to look, whichever way you're trying to trade it. So yeah, again, it could go either way. We had the bullish IBOS, then come into this 4 hour and daily supply here. So having mitigated this here, it was very likely we're going to see a pullback, possibly to that inside bar in the discount of sort of this internal range. But we were just sort of ranging sideways, so nothing massively convincing. But depending on how the M15 lined up, I was obviously happy to look for sells to sort of in anticipation of sort of catching this pullback from the daily demand and 4-hour supply. But yeah, nothing really lined up in the M15. The M15 was not clear this morning. So in the M15, we've obviously had 3 bullish breaks of structure there, and there, so pretty confirmed bullish trend. Obviously came into the 4-hour and daily supply up here, and then got our sort of pullback. Had this sort of internal is bullish overall. That's sort of the most significant recent internal range. So obviously we can come the whole way down in here and still continue higher, because the internal is still bullish for me. But then the smaller internal structure, the II boss, if you want to call it, we had this sort of range here that was holding, so there was that break structure there, and then price was sort of contained within here. You can see we like pull back, push down, sort of just ranging around there, which obviously isn't ideal. So coming into London, it's around 6:30. I literally just said in the session markups that I wanted to wait for more development. I knew it was possible that we could see the pullback off the 4-hour and daily supply towards the EQ of the M15 leg, or the 4-hour leg, which is there. But obviously the problem is you're in a messy range. It's like you could view that there as a protected internal hike to cause this IBOS. So when we pull back in here, the expectation was that basically price would react to supply and then put in a new low. But then what happened was price failed to take out this low, which means this high is weak. So he could, in theory, have come up and like mitigated something at the extreme of the range. Personally, I'm just not a fan of trading from weak legs, and this whole leg is weak as it failed to take out this high. So I was essentially waiting for more development. Ideally, what I would have liked to have seen is basically for price to close below that low there. That would have given us this new sort of supply range to trade from, and then I would have looked for price to pull back into the newly created supply, and then look to keep playing the pullback like that there. But as I will show you, price just pretty much just range round again. I think some people are looking to trade this supply. That's not a good trade at all, in my opinion. You can see we failed to even close below this sort of minor internal low. So we failed to close below that. So this high is weak. This high is weak because this leg failed to close below this. So you're basically trading from this sort of all this weak structure. Yes, you could say that this is a flip zone. Yes, probably do favour sells overall to target the EQ because this price is being contained within the supply range. But it's just not sort of area I want to be trading. So yeah, price just pretty much messed around, and then we finally started to shoot up towards the end of the session. Personally, I wouldn't have been looking for buys in here because it's just messy. It's like you've no real M15 demand to trade from like that. Didn't cause on it. It didn't cause a chalk. The chalk line was there, so we didn't get the bullish chalk until there. Yes, that moved the flip as well because obviously we reacted to the supply there and failed to put in a new low. So yeah, it's like trying to buy from here. It's just again these lows are both weak because they fail to put in highs. It's like I would advise everybody study this sort of price action because it's like there's weak highs, there's weak lows. It can literally go anyway. So the best thing to do is just set your alerts in high probability areas. I had an alert set in this POI here purely because it's not the best POI, but it had a lot of inducement in front of it, so we could have come in here and at least got a pullback, if not a continuation of the trend, and then obviously an alert set down here as well. But yeah, it's not an area with weak structure, weak lows, weak highs. It's just not an area you want to trade because it can literally go anyway. So yeah, I was more than happy just to sit my hands. Like there's no point even showing you anything in the M1 because literally in those sort of scenarios I'm not dropping down the M1. As I said, this POI I wasn't interested in trading from because it didn't close below the M15 low. So yeah, look, just messy conditions. Could have gone either way with this sort of supply range holding but then the larger internal and the swing both bullish. So yeah, tons of liquidity sitting behind here. Hadn't reached the EQ of the leg, so I was just happy enough to leave it, wait for something clear, wait for an iBoss either way to sort of show me which way the market wanted to go. So that is EU and AU. There's a couple of potential setups on EU and AU. I hope I sort of conveyed my thought process quite clearly why I wasn't really interested in this here, and then why when price was coming back to this POI I wasn't really interested in it at the end of the session, despite being interested in it at the start. So yeah, that's pretty much it. No trades for me. It's been a pretty quiet week. Only took one trade, a loss in AU. It was the same one Matt took in one of his markups. So yeah, very quiet week. Been a pretty quiet month, but still 2 days left of the trading month next week. So hopefully we'll get a nice end of the month. And yeah, that's it. If you have any questions or anything, just tag me in one of the public channels and I'll get back to you. And I hope this has helped some of you out a little bit, and I haven't just been rambling aimlessly for the last 20 minutes or so. So thanks guys, have a good day.